Imagine if a soccer riot nearly overthrew a government. In 532 CE Constantinople, that's essentially what happened, except the death toll reached 40,000 people, half the city burned, and the fate of an empire hung on one woman's refusal to run. This is the Nika Revolt, a chariot race gone wrong, an emperor ready to flee, and a massacre that reshaped Byzantine power forever. To understand how a sports riot nearly toppled an empire, we need to understand what the Hippodrome really was. And this wasn't just a stadium, it was the Super Bowl political convention and social media combined, holding 100,000 people. Right? The emperor's viewing box, called the Casisma, connected directly to the palace. When Justinian appeared here, he wasn't watching races, he was performing power, gauging public mood, receiving petitions from the crowd. Think of it like Soviet May Day parades. Western analysts studied who stood where on Lenin's mausoleum to decode Kremlin politics. Byzantine observers did the same at the Hippodrome, reading the emperor's expressions, noting who received favor, watching how he responded to the crowd's cheers or jeers. This was the closest thing to public opinion in an autocracy. The emperor needed the crowd's approval, and the crowd knew it. Now add the factions. The blues and the greens started as chariot racing supporters, like modern soccer ultras, but they evolved into something far more dangerous. Each faction controlled neighborhoods, wore distinctive costumes, engaged in street violence. They also carried religious identity. The blues leaned orthodox, and the greens leaned monophysite, believing Christ had one divine nature, not two. These groups despised each other. Murders, brawls, constant rivalry. Getting blues and greens to cooperate was like getting rival gangs to march together. It simply didn't happen. So you have two violent factions who hate each other. What could possibly unite them? A miracle, or at least what looked like one. January 532. The city prefect arrests 7 rioters and condemns them to death. But the execution goes wrong. The rope breaks twice. 2 men survive, 1 blue, 1 green. Monks shelter them in a nearby monastery. Overnight, these survivors become folk heroes, and the impossible happens. Blues and greens unite, demanding pardons for men who cheated death together. Justinian refuses. At his next Hippodrome appearance, the crowd's chant shifts. No more blue or green. Instead, one word. Nika. Victory. 5 days of chaos follow. Fires consume the original Hagia Sophia, the Senate House, half the city. Rioters crown a reluctant nobleman named Hypatius as rival emperor. The situation spirals beyond anyone's control. Justinian prepares ships to flee. His advisors urge escape. The dynasty that had ruled for decades stands ready to abandon Constantinople to the flames and the mob. Everything depends on what happens next. Then Theodora speaks. The Empress, a former actress and courtesan who understood spectacle and survival, delivers her famous line, "Purple makes a fine burial shroud." But Theodora doesn't just stiffen Justinian's spine, she acts. She coordinates with generals Belisarius and Narses. She helps devise the plan that will end the revolt. This wasn't inspirational rhetoric, this was operational leadership. Theodora grasped what Justinian momentarily forgot. Running meant certain death, fighting meant possible survival, and she knew exactly how to fight. The trap closes on January 18th. Belisarius leads troops through the Casisma into the Hippodrome. Narses enters from another gate. Soldiers seal every exit. The crowd, tens of thousands who came to crown their new emperor, finds itself locked inside with professional killers. What follows is systematic slaughter, no escape, no mercy, no negotiation. When it ends, between 30,000 and 40,000 people lie dead in the stadium, one of the bloodiest single acts of crowd suppression in ancient history, finished in a single afternoon. When the blood dried and the fires cooled, Justinian still sat on his throne. But Constantinople and the balance of power would never be the same. Before Nika, the factions could pressure emperors, demand concessions, threaten instability. After Nika, they remained, but broken. Never again would blues and greens unite against imperial authority. Justinian had demonstrated the ultimate lesson of autocratic survival, overwhelming force at the critical moment. Justinian rebuilt. The new Hagia Sophia, the one that still stands, rose from the ashes. His reign continued for another 3 decades. The pattern here repeats throughout history. Popular uprisings require unusual unity, factions setting aside differences. Regime survival depends on individual decisions at critical moments. And the willingness to use overwhelming force often determines who writes the history. Theodora's choice saved the dynasty. It also killed 40,000 people. Both things remain true. Power rarely offers clean moral categories, only consequences. The Hippodrome still exists in Istanbul, fragments of it anyway. Tourists walk where chariots raced and crowds died. The stones remember what the guidebooks often forget. Entertainment and politics have always been the same game.